This lesson covers managing non-domain joined servers and also servers in untrusted domains. Typically in Server Manager, additional servers can easily be added to be managed. For example, if I'm in Server Manager, I can go to Manage, Add Servers, and then I can either browse Active Directory and select remote servers to be managed, or I can go and type in DNS names or import from a file. And this will work without any problem. For example, if I just hit Find Now and don't select a specific server, I can just browse through all the different servers and add one of these to be managed by Server Manager or multiple machines at once. However, if the machine is in a workgroup that I want to manage or in an untrusted domain, there are some additional steps that have to be performed, primarily around my WS-Man being able to trust and manage that machine. But if that machine is a member of a workgroup, its user access control has to be modified to allow remote elevated sessions to be performed, which is required for Server Manager, and I may also have to modify the firewall on that remote workgroup machine to enable the WS management to function. So if I go back to my Server Manager box, I can go in here and I can do Manage and I can add server. So this time I'm going to add from DNS because it's not part of the domain. So for example, I have a Scratch machine that I'm going to search for, and it found it, and I can then add it to be managed. You'll notice I get an error. This is because this is not part of my domain or a trusted domain, which means it cannot actually communicate correctly. You see here, RPC server is unavailable and cannot process the requests. So this doesn't work. What I now do is I right click, I select Manage As. This is a work group and the actual work group name is called Workgroup. So I would put in Workgroup, the name of the account I wish to connect as. Now if this was a remote domain that was untrusted, I could put in the remote domain name here. I type in my password and click OK. This is now communicating to that box, and hopefully I'll get some details back once that successfully communicates. There are some additional steps I needed to do to make this work. You can see that is now working. Firstly, on this machine, I might have to modify my trusted hosts. Now I can look at my current value by just running this piece of PowerShell right here. Now you can see mine is set to star or asterisk. This means I trust everyone, so there is nothing I need to do. Now in your environment, this may be another value completely. It may be blank. It may be a specific list of servers. If you need to modify and add additional servers, I run this first command, which stores the current value into a variable. Then I modify that value with the existing set of values that I stored. Then I add my new servers, so server 1, server 2, DCO3, whatever they are. That would then modify your trusted lists of hosts. On the remote machine, because it's a member of a work group, I'm actually here modifying my UAC, my user access control, to enable me to run those elevated sessions via a remote session. Normally, only the local administrator account can run elevated processes in a work group. This is changing that behavior. The other item I may need to change is, because I'm on a work group, if I look at my current network connection, I consider myself on a public network. If I now go and look at my firewall, I just type firewall on the start screen, and here's Windows Firewall Advanced Configuration, Security. I look at my inbound rules. If I scroll down to the bottom, by default, I'll have Windows Remote Management HTTP enabled for the exception for the domain profile and private. Because mine is on the public, I would most likely have to manually enable this rule. Now I've already done that to make this work, but this is something else you would have to do to remotely manage workgroup machines. So make sure you go and enable this rule. And at that point, you should be able to manage it successfully. As you can see, I'm doing here. So I'm now connected to it. I can do that management. Microsoft actually have a very good article. Here's the URL, and it actually walks through those values that you saw me set. and they also have a good troubleshooting article. So when you start managing untrusted and workgroup machines, you're going to get a number of different errors. This article walks through all of those different errors and helps you troubleshoot them. The easiest way to find this is to just do a search on Bing for Windows Server 2012 Server Manager Troubleshooting Guide. So that's the full URL. Obviously, you would need to type that in one line, so it's fairly long, which is why I think searching for it would actually be easier. So that's managing non-domain joined servers using Server Manager. Now, additionally, you have PowerShell. So what I'm actually going to do over here, I'm going to clear this. Now imagine I have a remote machine. Normally when I run commands against a remote machine, it runs as my current credential. So for example, if I just say invoke a command on a remote computer, and I'll just say this is my domain controller. And the only command I'm going to run is to ask, who am I? I did the wrong bracket there. And you can see here, it's my local credential, which will match what it is when I type who I am right here. But I can specify alternate credentials, which I would need to do if this was an unmanaged machine, not on my same domain. Now I can manually specify this programmatically, or I'm actually going to run a commandlet to say get credential. So this is now going to prompt me with a screen, so I can type in any credential I want. So I'm just going to specify a different user in my domain. And that's now been saved into that $cred variable. I'm then going to run exactly the same command again, but this time I'm going to pass that credential. Now you'll notice the response I get says I am user Saviltech John. So it used the credential that I passed and I stored as part of that get credential command. So if I need to remotely manage non-domain join machines in a workgroup through PowerShell, you just need to utilize the -credential switch, which is available in nearly every PowerShell command that you're dealing with remote machines, and then store a credential. Again, get credential is an interactive way to do it. I can also use it using scripting to set the username and the password.